Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with Gord, who had a brush with death more than once in his life, the last time being with a diabetic coma. And today he's talking to me about his 1-year anniversary free from diabetes medication, and free from the unhealthy relationship he used to have with food and with his need for certain types of comfort foods. Just before we get into our little chat, I'd like to tell you about lots of free resources you can get your hands on my website, aftersugarclub.com. You can watch the videos about what to eat that doesn't contain added sugars. You can download your simple guide to getting more energy with less sugar. Just click on the Simple Guide tab. And if you're ready and committed to break free from sugar for good, then join us in our monthly membership, the After Sugar Club. Go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club. And if you need more accountability and encouragement and guidance, then join the Life After Sugar 6-week program. Go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the tab Program. You can also find lots of free resources and inspiration on my Facebook page, Life After Sugar, on my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, where you'll see pictures of what I eat and what I do in my sugar-free life, as well as on the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, where you'll find all kinds of tips, quick wins, and recipes with the videos there. All right, here's my chat with Gord. So today I'm talking to Gord, and Gord, can you tell me a little bit about what your life was like when you were still consuming a lot of sugar?
Oh, well, it was wondrous because I found refuge in food. I would consider myself to be that kind of emotional eater that would, be going through whether it was tough times at work or stress for other self-imposed reasons. I would always turn to food and find solace in it. And, given that we've had this pandemic challenge the last few years, and when you combine that with I work in a job that's done virtually all through the web. So I didn't, there was increasing isolation in terms of what I could do outside and around me where I live in a nice community. But that kind of got to me, and I guess just paying too much attention to the news, because the reality to me was I could turn it off for a week and turn it on the next week, and it's just the same stuff amplified. So I knew, for having had a 10-year break before of television, that I needed to cut it out. But I didn't, because I was all tuned into what was going on. And I was actually making a documentary film a bit about the pandemic and interviewing people. So I was focused, but for me, it got to be too much. So I think I started to gain lots of weight. I got very lazy in my eating. So I would, Thursday night would be pizza, Saturday night would be Chinese food ordered in. And then, my share of sweets and late night snacking with the, taco chip kind of things, or for me, it was rice crackers, thinking that, I'm masking it with something that's much healthier, but in reality not. Lots of pop and stuff like that. And I've always had my excess weight, visceral fat, I'll call it, that I've been carrying for many years, and never really was able to work it off. But I guess the pandemic gave me an excuse to go hog wild. And then when I stepped on the scale one day and it said 268, I nearly had a heart attack. Well, that was possible too. But I mean, I was at that stage 20 pounds more than I'd ever been looking at the scale. And I knew I was that heavy because I was like, here I am buying double XL stuff. And oh, you know what? I can't fit into pants that they sell in local stores here. And I'm going like, this has just got to stop. But I just kind of like thought about it and didn't take a lot of action
Yeah.
until
Yes.
until
Until.
until January 18th, 2021, when things came crashing down, which was I had to go to the hospital in an emergency. And I'll just give you a little lead up to that before I explain the details of that. So, leading up to that, for some reason, I didn't know that losing a lot of excessive weight all of a sudden was a bad thing. So I was, over the last couple of months losing about 4 to 5 pounds a month. And I
A
was
month
thinking,
or a
man,
week?
sorry, a week, 4 to 5 pounds a week. And over a couple of months, I think I lost near 30 pounds and of the 60 I put on. And I'm thinking, I'm loving this. I'm losing the weight like super fast. It doesn't get better than this. But you know what? I'm not sleeping well because I have dry mouth and I'm having to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes. And my organs feel stressed and I don't feel right. Well, what ended up coming down crashing was in the last week before I walked into emergency in January, I started to lose my vision. And because I edit video and create content for a living, that kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
And so my brother took me to emergency, and the hospital did blood tests and scans, checked my organs and everything. And they come back to me like in a couple of hours sitting there in emergency and say, well, we consider you DKA status,
What
which
does that mean,
it
Gord?
means diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a condition that can lead to a diabetic coma or death. And they said my condition was pretty serious and that they're putting me in ICU to help bring me back for a couple of days on a drip, saline and whatever concoctions just to replenish my body. And I go, holy cow, I guess I must have a great tolerance for pain or enjoy pain. I don't know what it was, but it was just an incredible wake-up call. So
Can I
to make
ask
it,
you,
sure.
Gord, was that the first you'd ever heard of you having anything to do with diabetes?
Well, years ago, I'd been told, your blood sugar's kind of like, borderline or getting up there. It's kind of a good idea to get things under control with your eating habits a little better because, you don't want to have this happen to you later on because it's harder. It's like sort of like the more you kick the can down the road, the more price you pay. So, but they never prescribed anything for me, just like to recommend dietary habits. And because of the fact that I was moving to a smaller community and over the last 2-3 years getting it, I don't even have my own doctor locally here. So I have to go back to the town I was in, an hour and a half drive away
Which
to
was
see a doctor.
Toronto?
Yes, Toronto. But now everything's virtual, right? And the appointments are just like, it's a whole different nature, but that's another topic. So yeah, that's the story for that.
So they kind of mentioned something about blood sugar in your past, but it was when you were in the emergency room and they told you you are close to a diabetic coma. That's when it actually kind of came home to you. Is that right?
So it came home to me in spades. I had already moved to this small community to get away from the stress because I had some financial distress for the last decade when I lost my primary job as in IT leadership and going through that period of time of trying different things and then finding myself. Fortunately, I found myself and love what I do, but I had done so much damage to my body. And I had other ailments, which included brain surgery, eye tumor, lots of like serious life challenge stuff to deal with. And so I moved to the small community to get to sort of like seek refuge and rediscover myself and get connected to know that I wanted more of a life that was going to have a lot less stress, because I believe the chemicals that our body produces, our hormones and things like that can be our mind is capable of doing a lot of damage to ourselves. So I realized that I needed to rethink life in essence to find my place to joy at a whole other level. So after sitting there in ICU, I said, this has got to end, because how much further do I have to go? I was an inch from death.
Yeah.
So that was a grand wake up call. So all of us, and then dealing with the medical system, thinking that I had type 1 diabetes, like a rare condition that happens as an onset for adults. And dealing with, knowing that I'm more holistically inclined with what I do to take care of myself. I had a lot of stuff to deal with, because, that's a challenge in itself for people. We all may have different beliefs about the medical care we receive, or the path we take to get our health back, and reconciling those things, and dealing with, loved ones and friends and people around you that may have different beliefs than you, but want to be supportive. And you have to navigate through all of that. But I must say that the hospital hooked me up with what's called the family diabetes clinic, tied to the hospital. And I got incredible, caring people that checked on me every 2 weeks for the first several months. And they just did an amazing job. And I'm very curious. When I go all into something, I'll ask all the questions on earth. And I got to be a master and understand what was going on in my body. And I carefully monitored and transitioned my way. My goals were, and I set them while I was sitting in the hospital on 60 units of insulin a day, that I cannot afford, number one, to be on this kind of medication, because I don't have a plan that would subsidize all the cost for the insulin and all of the paraphernalia that go with blood testing to a significant degree. And I go, you know what? I just want to find a natural healing approach to doing that. And I actually did.
I don't want to cut you off, sorry.
Sure.
Did anyone sort of give you any advice complementary to the sort of allopathic treatment? Did anyone give you any advice about what to eat, or really what not to eat?
Yes, I did get a lot of advice on what to eat and what not to eat. And how ironic it was that in the hospital, here I am on whatever units of insulin, and in comes, applesauce, sweet potatoes, like mashed potatoes, all kinds of things that are glycemically a disaster, starchy foods and things like that. And I'm thinking, really, I'm in the hospital and I'm near diabetic coma, and they're feeding me the absolute worst stuff. So they trimmed it. So to some degree, they did help. But I knew the future was going to be a lot through me figuring it out and doing some exploration on a solution that would work for me. But there were several people, whether they be nurses or people in the clinic. Like before I even left the hospital, I was wired into that clinic to look after me. And I had dietitians, I had nurses. They intentionally mixed it up. So I would get this particular call would be with a dietitian, and I can ask anything I want. And every step of the way, they took monitoring results of all my blood sugar readings, and they would just go, huh? How are you doing this? Because
it was
I successfully, within 2.5 months of being in the hospital, got myself from 60 units of insulin to 0. Wow. We were monitoring it very closely. And as long as I held that level of blood sugar I was at, or lower, over a few day period, I was able to drop it up to a maximum of 10% from where it was. Okay, but not to exceed that. So we ratcheted it down, right? But this didn't come just from me automatically going home and continuing my normal way of being. I actually totally explored new avenues of healing, because I was tired of having such excess fat and never being able to get rid of what I needed to do to help make my body physically stronger and healthier. And that's when I started to explore how to heal my metabolism.
That's a book, right? How to Heal Your Metabolism?
Yeah, yes, it's a book by Kate Deering, and it's called How to Heal Your Metabolism. Stop blaming aging for your slowing metabolism.
Is that what you were doing? Were you blaming your age?
Not my age, but I would say more laziness and inaction, apathy towards it, and thinking that, it'll just be another phase. But I do believe that as a result of aging, it takes longer to rebound. It takes longer to solve this. It takes longer to build muscle. It takes longer. So I had to surrender to all of this. So imagine, as soon as I got home from the hospital and had a little bit of strength, I was out walking in freezing cold winters, and we get lake effect snow and high winds, and I'm sitting there all bundled up on a 2 in the afternoon and doing my half an hour, 45-minute walk in the freezing cold every day, because I learned what exercise does to help the pancreas and produce insulin, because
Yes.
they all feared I had type 1 diabetes and possibly wasn't able to produce insulin.
Mhm.
And all of these things proved wrong. And I don't know whether it's just that my diet had the ability to heal it in and of itself and the exercise, or it was just maybe misdiagnosed, or I just got totally lucky because I got a flash of death, but I came back before I did severe damage. And, you know, I'll never know the 100% right answer other than where I am now and moving forward.
Amazing. You can never go back and compare, but you can you give us an idea of what kinds of things you were eating and what kinds of things you stopped eating?
Okay. So one of the biggest things that's changed is my cutting down of things like processed foods, right? And even believe it or not, in this metabolic diet that I follow, I'm not eating green roughage in the normal text context, because it's a little tougher on the digestive system. But I'll eat more red root vegetable stuff like, carrots or celery and things of that nature that just seem to digest easier. And part of that metabolic improvement is about getting rid of processed anything, or cutting down on it. And I'm far from perfect. And now, because I've got the results and my metabolism has improved so much, I just process food better. And it's like, oh my God, I'm able to actually enjoy food now. And my blood sugar's not going crazy. So for me, it was like a wholesale system adjustment to a different lifestyle and a different way of eating. So more in the way of things like eating. So believe it or not, in this diet, um, I was eating a ratio of fat, of protein, carbs, and fat. Well, I was eating 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein, and then trying to keep my fat in the range of 20 to 30%, and eating things that have like a lower glycemic index. That means a lower burn, right?
Yes.
Burn rate.
Yeah, it
So,
spikes your
so things like,
insulin less.
so for example, in the book, Kate mentions things like sweet potato is like a near perfect food, because although it has a medium level glycemic index, it's just great for the burn and the nutritional value. So I started to look at things not in a way as I did in the past, was conventionally carb counting only, because there's a lot of things in here that I get to enjoy with carbs. So for example, in the morning, I will eat high quality cottage cheese, 1 or 2%, and I will mix that with berries and a half a teaspoon of honey. On many diets, that would be a sin. You know what I mean? Some of that. But I love that stuff. I'm even able to eat no pulp, real orange juice and things like that. But it's about balancing those ratios across your meals. And another big factor, Netta, that made the world of difference for me is I got religious on tracking my food intake and seeing those balances. I used an app called Chronometer. I don't know if you've heard of that,
I
but
haven't.
it's incredible, because they have all the food labels and stuff for a lot of the typically available foods. And if a food or a supplement you don't have, you can actually enter it. And then I can also template my meals and different things like that. But I got to see my ratios of everything from my carb, protein, fat intake to actual my nutritional value that I'm getting out of the food I'm eating. So I could actually see what I'm putting in my body and the benefits of it. And I learned a lot more about portions, and I realized how I typically ate double what anybody should eat in
Yeah.
portions.
Yeah, that portion control is a big sticking point for a lot of people. We eyeball it and we tend to double it. Yeah. And
yeah, exactly. I was eating double portions, everything all the time.
right. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
common. And for some people, what tracking what you eat is a real help, like it is for you. For other people like me, it's a nightmare because I hated it, but only because I'm able to eyeball pretty well
Yeah, well,
I don't have a problem now.
you
Yeah.
now know what you mix together, food combined is going to give you the results that you want, and you have a ballpark. It's not about, yes, in the beginning I was kind of anally precision based in what I did, and I hate using tracking apps because of the effort, but Chronometer just made it easy. They've just done a brilliant job, because I can go, yeah, I'm eating my same breakfast 4 out of 7 days a week. I just go copy, paste, I'm done. And there's my nutritional profile for what I just ate. And then if I mix it up and go, oh, you know what, today I'm going to eat some organic steel cutouts, which is very high in carbs comparatively, but it's got a nice slow burn. But guess what? It's a little heavy on the carb side. So that means I'll balance it with a little more protein. And you know what I mean? There's lots of fat and carbs in the oatmeal. So I just got to learn to know the chemistry a little better without it being too burdensome. That's my belief, because I heard you say the hate for the tracking. I was there, but I can tell you the value that it gave me about understanding what I was actually putting in was priceless for me. And I could see the effect of the portion sizing, everything.
Perfect. Do whatever helps. That's my approach, is like, whatever helps you, go for it. And so really that kind of brush with death for you was like that turning point, and for some of us, it takes that kind of a slap in the face. That's more than a slap in the face, a slap in the face and punch in the gut and everything else. And that was what it took, right, for you to make a real change. At which age, how old were you when it happened?
So I was 61 years old when I just last January. We're not even at the year anniversary yet, and I've been off medication for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it was just totally life altering, and as you call it, a gut punch. And it was of a severe enough gut punch that I'd say I was lucky this time. I may not be so lucky next time.
Well, hopefully there won't be a next time if you carry on.
Yeah, hopefully there won't be. And you know what? Inflammation, pain, all of these things, I'm at so much healthier a level now. And it was like I was out there shoveling some snow the other day and moving some things around, and I go, you know what? I did this kind of effortlessly, and I'm not exhausted. I'm not sore. I'm not, all of these things, these bonuses of getting my health back are incredible. I mean, I still want to lose another 25 pounds if I can, but I'm in sort of a bit of a hiatus window. And I don't want to say I let loose. I'm enjoying some things a little more, but I'm still very smart. Like my breakfast is always sound. My dinner may be sound, but I'll have a pizza once a month or something.
So be it.
Yeah. So, and you know what? My metabolism handles it awesomely, and my blood sugar recovers pretty quickly. So I think it was about chronic abuse of my system that just led to that deterioration. And I think now I've even stopped measuring my blood sugar. Okay. I was doing it just down to once a day, but I'm probably going to do it periodically, because, that stuff's not cheap to use and consume. But it is an important thing to help keep you honest. And I think it's a good habit to learn, because, diabetes is a prolific disease out there that a lot of people actually have it and have no clue.
True. Yes. Yeah. And so do the doctors still think you are type 1, type 2, or not diabetic anymore?
So as of September 1st, my endocrinologist actually said, you no longer need my services. They were trying to get me on cholesterol drugs, all kinds of things. They were looking at things that my liver, fatty liver, and tested that. Well, my metabolic way of eating and changing and diet and health and everything has improved everything without medication.
Yep.
So
it'll do that.
It's still got a little ways to go in the progress in some of the traditional measures, but I don't know if people know this, that when you're once diagnosed as diabetic, they automatically ratchet the sensitivity of values in their testing, the way they scrutinize you. So my levels of cholesterol, for them to be concerned, may be a different benchmark point than when I was diabetic, now that I'm not diabetic. Okay. So, and I learned that from my GP doctor. And so now I know that as long as I'm heading in the right direction, like I got my vitamin D levels into very healthy range, and various blood markers tied to fatty liver detection and other things like that have all improved significantly. And I'm losing that visceral fat I had. So it's been a dream. And I'm just excited to have opportunities like being on your show to share with people, to give them hope and believe that it doesn't mean you're on a sentence for life of drugs and medication. It's ultimately up to you and the choices that you make. But they've told me statistically, the majority of people end up on those programs for life with medication and care that way because they just don't want to do the work.
Yeah, yeah. And so you were, when you were in the emergency, your value in Canadian terms, that was 39.5, you were telling me?
Yes, 39.5. And we know like normal range is like 4 to 7.
That is, I
So
can see why you were almost at death's door.
yes, like I
Yeah.
never even heard numbers that high
And
personally, but there are people that have had higher, I've learned since,
okay,
but it's pretty off the dial crazy.
it is, it is. And
Yeah.
it's quite amazing. You're like a walking miracle.
Yeah, I've had a few of these to like brush with deaths, too many to want to have, but they've given me a lot of life lessons, and I believe I have a lot more uh life ahead and a lot to give back. So that's why I appreciate you having me here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's very inspiring. And from that 39.5, are you telling me now that you're in the normal range?
Yeah, so the A1C test is a 3-month measure of your blood glucose level, and my last 2 tests were, the first one was 5.7 and the second one was 5.5. I think I may be back up a little bit, but imagine that's a 3-month average representation, medication free.
Medication free. That's amazing. But the medication helped you to get there, right? At the beginning.
Um, well, yes, because my body wasn't producing the insulin, or the insulin resistance challenge I had, because my organs were all stressed out. My body just wasn't functioning. I also use other health devices, something called a bioptron, which I used because of my eye tumor, which is something called photobiomodulation. But you can charge and apply energy to your chakras and get it to the mitochondrial level of healing and helping your cells in your body. So I would actually give a 10-minute like treatment of the pancreas as part of my daily routine. I learned different things to use this kind of device to help with different kind of ailments. I do it for my eyes because I told you like my eye tumor stabilized, and I just feel blessed that whatever I'm doing is working. I can't single out one thing or another. I was also on a hardcore regimen of supplementation advised through a naturopath that specialized in oncology when I had the eye tumor. And, it's a whole mix of things. I've had Chinese acupuncture and specialized treatment to help me with the eye through the early cycle. So it can be a whole bunch of things, but I do believe we have to make those long-term changes, or we're just going to keep revisiting it. And boy, it's so tempting, because we live in a world where it's increasingly harder to get access to the quality of foods that we enjoy. When I say that, harder, meaning we have to look a little more and be more diligent in our shopping, because the processed food and prepared foods that maybe don't use the best ingredients, they're so plentiful and rich and poking us in the eye every day,
And cheap.
that and cheaper. That's right. And we need to wake up to it. It's like, as they say, what price is your health? It's priceless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's never been as cheap to make ourselves sick.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know
yeah.
and it's true, it does take some effort on our part as patients, hopefully so that we don't become patients, and as consumers, and this is what Life After Sugar is all about, to empower us as consumers first and foremost, to yes, okay, to make a little bit of effort, but do you find that it takes you less effort to eat well and feel healthy than it did to be sick?
Yeah, and this is where it also comes to, a lot of like what you share as well. It's like working on your mindset, right? So to me, before, I was feeling more the victim and self-pity when I would go the emotional route, and then just it didn't matter. I'll just stuff in what pleased me to eat. Um, but now, trying to make certain things more habitual, like for example, if I can walk regular, and it's increasingly harder in winter with harsher conditions, if I can get out and walk 3 to 4 times a week for 45 minutes, it keeps me incentivized to match quality eating, or at least a certain level of quality eating. So I don't think about eating junk per se, but I got things like a foodie grill now. So I have sweet potato almost every day, but I air fry it. So it's just literally, heated by air and tastes delicious. And if I use oil, I'll use like, avocado oil or coconut oil or uh, extra virgin olive oil. I'm being very careful in what I do, but when I take it, I use such small amounts. I don't need it.
Yeah.
And when you realize how much you don't need of the way you would saturate foods before for flavor, and enjoy them just the same, you find your way to a little better, healthier eating, right?
Fantastic. Yeah, totally. So now you're in your early 60s, feeling, I would imagine, better than last decade and maybe even the one before.
Well, I've had a few things go wrong, but I can tell you that I'm now, in a much better state. I have no pains, no discomfort, no taking any pills or anything like that, and I'm physically a lot more active. I mean, I still have a ways to go, to get certain physical strength and flexibility back, but that's because of accidents and other things in the past. But I'm just so grateful that I'm what shall I say, on the mend and getting better as I go forward, which is the dream.
Yeah,
That's,
totally.
and you know what? I live in a small community that's based on mostly semi-retired and retired people. And I would tell you, I would go out to the trail to walk, and what would whiz by me all throughout my walk, a handful of times would be like, no joke, 70+ year olds, all dressed up in their bike gear, loving the trails. Um, and I look at them and I go, holy cow, where do they get that vitality and strength? And they're in their 70s rocking it, like flying by me on their bikes and working hard. And I go, yeah, you know what? This is kind of motivational. The fact that when I moved up here, left the city where I would walk out the door and like a neighbor wouldn't even wave to say hi because they're so into their zone of the intensity of the day and getting to work in the traffic, to now it's like every neighbor is like, hi, how are you? How can I help you? Like because of my skills in computer and technology, I'm a rarity out here. So I literally, I have, okay, so I've never had more gifts in my life, like cooking, baking, these kinds of things. People going on trips to shop and asking me what they can pick up, and it's just so nice to be in an area neighborhood like this. But one particular lady would bring me like muffins and stuff that are just pure poison. I told her I was dealing with diabetic situation, and so now I got my last gift was like, um butternut squash soup and some mammoth sweet potatoes. So I thought that was very thoughtful.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And we tend to underestimate the value of community in
Oh
our
yeah.
general well-being, right? And
And
you're
that's a
finding,
great point. That
yeah.
that played a big role for me. Like I said, the family diabetes clinic and just the people around me were very supportive, and believe me, it's no easy fight on your own. It definitely isn't, because you soul search a lot when you get those kind of, the before scenario I described to you, where I was like, nearly out of it.
Yes, yeah, totally. Wow. That is such an inspiring story. And you went from that almost dead from a diabetic coma all the way to not needing any diabetes medications whatsoever in the space of a few months. That's amazing.
Yeah, in about 5.5 months, I went to totally drug free, and I didn't want to declare it until I had an A1C test that was reflective of my score without any meds in my body, and that was achieved, as of September 1st. I was when I got that test back of 5.5, and I had been 3 months totally drug free. So I literally timed my blood testing with the movements in my medication, because also we wanted record of that for my healthcare, right? So And I think there's so much people can do. And, you know, as I said, allopathic medicine keep trying to push on me to think that there's something wrong. And I could have easily buckled into taking drugs and just being committed onto it to longer term. But I think a lot of people don't think to question or challenge that, and think that popping a pill and putting that stuff that's inorganic in your body is just fine. And I only got to be, that way because I actually worked in the holistic field in a company that produced product for 6 years. So I ended up seeing what can happen when we more naturally take care of ourselves with what we stick in our body. So for me, it was an easier way to be, but this is where it's tough. Unless you are surrounded with like-minded people and have community, it's very easy to get taken by the psychosis of what allopathic medicine emblazons on our brains through advertising and everything nonstop. It's the whole big pharma treatment approach to things that people don't really know about the other options because they just don't see them and aren't exposed to their potential.
For sure, yes. And also that's what Life After Sugar kind of helps people to empower them to become more educated patients so that we, can question things. And I mean, it doesn't mean that the doctors are not correct or that, regular allopathic conventional medicine it has no place. It definitely has. But as patients, I think we do have the power to educate ourselves and to question things. And, you're a great example of that.
Mm-hmm. You just said something that made me think of a quick story that I need to share. It's very quick. I was watching a television show, one of these medical shows, where they interns and all this kind of thing. They had a very obese patient in there, and he was in there because his foot was gangrene, and he was in there to have it amputated, and because he was hardcore diabetic. And anyways, they lift the sheet off the end of his bed to look at his foot the night before the operation. They touch his toe. It literally fell off. He wasn't even phased or anything bothered him. The patient said, "Can I have a pizza now?" And that sort of like said everything. And the doctors looked at him like you're crazy. Anyways, next day he wakes up because he had insisted all along in his hospital stay just to continue like his way of being. And some people, my point is, the next day they came in to see him. He's all fine. He's in recovery. He's now lost a foot. And no joke, the intern greets him with a pizza when he comes to see him because that's what the guy wanted desperately. And it's up to you as an individual to know what you want. And I think allopathic medicine, the stuff may be great for people that find a way, if that does work, to balance what they're dealing with. But for me, I want to have cleaner living and a much greater level of mental clarity and physical well-being, that being on medication, given all kinds of side effects and symptoms, is not an easy feat to achieve.
Well, you've done amazing. I mean, I'm impressed and inspired, and I know the listeners of the podcast will be as well. And thank you, Gord, for talking to me about your experience. Wonderful.
My pleasure. And people just, you got to believe in yourself and don't get down on yourself if, you fall off the rails or you're not following something to perfection. The fact is, if you are making change, it's going to lead in a good direction for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gord.
My pleasure.
So inspiring talking to Gord, because he's really come a long way from a really serious diabetic state all the way to not even needing meds anymore, all in 1 year. And he took his own health into his own hands, of course with medical supervision at the beginning, but he was proactive for his own health. He educated himself about what he could do and what he could eat or not eat to improve his own health. And that, I find, is yet another inspiring example of someone who is empowering himself to change his life for the better, and part of that is cutting back sugar. Has he cut sugar completely? No, but in my humble opinion, any reduction in sugar is a step in the right direction and a huge win. And if you want to find more inspiring stories, then subscribe to this podcast and listen to the other episodes. Every story is an inspiration, and every story is different because we're all different. And the goal of Life After Sugar is to empower you and inspire you to find your own version of feeling free from sugar, one that fits you, your lifestyle, and your personality. It doesn't have to be the same as anyone else. It certainly doesn't have to be the same as mine. So all the different episodes and all the different stories on the Life After Sugar podcast are there to show you that there are as many ways of cutting sugar and living happily free from sugar as there are people. So if you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to rate it and scroll down and leave a review and let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. Remember, every small step to reduce sugar is a big win. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.